I think everyone's joined, so I think we can start. Okay, so this is session 2 of our series of sessions on online course design. And this is not at all a comprehensive online course design course. We will be offering one of those this summer, and you're more than welcome to participate in it, and the end product will be your own developed online course. Today, our purpose is to take a look at, now that you have a syllabus, you've got some modules set up, you've got your students situated, it's how do I actually create content in my course so that I have an environment students can use, and how I can actually teach and provide lessons and instruction in my online class. So today we'll focus on building the first module in the course and that process. And one of the things to think about is that in any course, right, students have 3 modes of interaction, right? They have student to student, student to instructor, and student to content. And we have a number of ways that students interact that. So what you're looking for in your course is a healthy balance of those 3 types of interaction. And so no different when we design our online course, we'll be looking to have the balancing those 3 types of interaction as we develop our course. So as we think of our course content, it's not all going to be student hears from instructor. It's not all going to be student talks to other students. And it's not all going to be student reads this book and then takes this exam. So part of this process is that for many years, and I think this was done especially in the early days of online learning, I think a number of instructors saw that there are some elements that tended to be more popularly used than others. And so that becomes a paradigm. And that paradigm doesn't quite fit, but it becomes adopted so that everyone thinks, well, I have a 7-week course. We have to have 7 discussion boards, 1 every week, and everything like that. And then the discussions, well, everyone's got to respond to another student, and they have to have 250 words. And this is not at all, as we'll find out as we talk about discussion boards, that's not at all what we want you to be doing. You have better use of your time, you have a better use of student time, and this is an area where maybe in 7 weeks, if you had 2 really good discussion boards that lasted a period of weeks that allowed for a real exchange of ideas on a major discussion concept, that'd be great. It's a high value practice, the students get that engagement, but having too many of these creates busy work for students that they don't want. It creates rather uninspiring graded work that teachers don't want. And overall, it creates sort of this feeling at first like, wow, there's a lot of potential here. That's something we really want to carry through. So we'll talk a little bit about that. The next part is the student to instructor interaction. And so it's also designing an online course is not just simply downloading a bunch of videos or hooking up a bunch of links and letting it go. So you have to provide some narrative structure to instruct students how to get to where they need to go. And coming back to what those kinds of things are. So it doesn't mean you won't have them. It just means that you'll have a nice mix of things. So one of the ways we engage in this way is through the use of pages. And so this came up in the first session. So let's go back and take a look at pages. So if we go back into this welcome page, we go to modules. Here's an example from a course that's been designed. So we'll see here by this icon of a page means that it's a page. This icon means assignment. It goes through. And so this is from a data visualization course. And so if we start, we notice that everything is sort of labeled with a 1 point something. So this provides some concept of structure or order, that there's a progression. And we'll notice that we use the indents and things. So here we are introduced to the unit, that big set of concepts. In it, we have the outcomes, the aligned unit outcomes, and where students will be assessed. And one of the things I always try to do, and is good design practice, so we should really have it, is especially if the students are doing a course asynchronously, we tell them, it takes between 10 to 15 minutes to do this, or whatever amount of time it is. And doing that will help students actually plan out their schedule. So one of the things that can happen is students might say, oh, well, I have this assignment, it's due, I'll try to do it on Saturday when I have time, and it's not due until Sunday. And then they realize, oh, wow, this assignment should take me about 20 hours to complete. So I guess I'll spend all of Saturday and sleep for 4 hours into Sunday to get it done. So this helps them plan things out. So in a page, what I've done is have an estimated time to complete. So I tell them this should take between 1 to 2 hours to complete. I include a reading assignment. And then content for the course. That would be the kind of content that I might deliver. Now, it's very easy to say, if you want to share a PowerPoint or drop one of those in here, you can. We'll talk a little bit about that in a moment. But instead of using a PowerPoint, I use the content functions of a page in Canvas. And here's why. One, it's much easier to manage for students. I don't have to have them being able to see PowerPoints or anything like that. I can also check, because one of the key elements of our online courses, or any of our online content, is that it does have to meet Americans with Disabilities Act requirements, ADA requirements, and it does have to be accessible, which means that the color contrast is acceptable, and that images like this have alt text, which means that we can have descriptors of these kinds of images, so a screen reader can tell people who are visually impaired what is being communicated. We also have to make sure that as we go through, that we have a clear look in organization so students can follow it. But with pages, you can put files, you can put links to recordings. So for example, here, if you're worried about a video, in this case, I have my lesson or my instruction and explanation of how certain things are done that students can follow along with. I provide an assignment following that in which students can rehearse those skills. And then, this is not a high stakes assignment. After that, I also have an explanation that's released so students can see how I got to a particular visualization set or a visual end result, and they can walk through it in case they have to revise anything. And you do this as I go throughout the course. So you can walk students through step by step. You can use a video to provide instruction. You can continue your instruction, so you can break it down into smaller pieces and chunk it out. I can share files with them so they can practice along with my video if they want to. And then I can keep going through. So that's great. Now, how do I make a page, and does it have to look like this? A page does not have to look like this at all. This has had a little extra development and design to it, but in practicality, a lot of you will be making a functional page for students. What should that look like? Well, very simply, you should title it. And so let's call this 7.1. Wow, introduction. There we go. And in your sample, what I would have, and you have this rich content editor, which is this area here. Notice you have a number of functions, bold, italics. I can bullet, I can have a numbered list. I can also have a table. Now, in the early days of HTML, it was popular to use a table to actually structure a web page. So, for example, if I wanted to make certain sections on a web page by inserting a table, I could actually change the table or the cell sizes to actually structure a page. Under new guidelines, we'd suggest not doing that. In fact, we discourage it. What we would go with instead is that only using tables to actually convey tabular data. So if you have an actual table that needs to be a table, that's what I would use a table for. If it's not, if it's just merely a structural thing to organize pictures or things, we should talk about maybe doing something else or finding a different way to structure or arrange the page in the way you want. So we also have a way of embedding our videos, links, and everything else. So here, if I want, what I would start with is, I have my title. I'd say estimated time to complete. How long should students take on this particular task? And then I might start dividing by concept. So, so this might be equivalent to the beginning of your day in a face-to-face class. And then you can make these bolder. You can increase the font sizes to make them like a header, right? You can even use header sizes if you wish. So you would have your concept 1, concept 2, and then underneath you would start in on your you might at that point wish to use a video. Let's say you've recorded a video and you've shared it to your YouTube channel, or you want to use a TED Talk or something from a YouTube. Well, that's fine, and you can do that. So if I was to go to YouTube, and I'll shamelessly self-promote again. So I'll go to my channel. And so let's say I want to share something about announcements. Well, if I go to announcements and I right click or control click, you'll see this menu. I have a few options. I can actually share it at a particular point. But the first I'll try is copying the embed code. So if I copy that code, and now I want to put it in, I can actually embed it within the page by clicking on this film clip up here that says Insert/Edit Media. Going to embed, and then pasting that embed code below. That code sets the size and embeds that YouTube video in the page. And the one other thing that you need to do before you just post a video is you have to set up your video. Explain what this is. So instead of dropping a video on students, give it some context. So it's something we remind a lot with online courses, because in a face-to-face class, we often don't think about how many ways we provide context for students to let them know what's going on or how to find things or what to do. And here, we just have to be very, very mindful, very planful about providing that setup and that context so students know how all these pieces are fitting together. Let them know like what this concept does or how this instruction fits into the big picture. So another thing in the introductory text I would include, how does this fit into the big picture of my outcomes? Slash course. Okay, so another way I can drop a video in is if I just have the link and I copy the video URL here, and I go here, I can click this film clip again. And instead of clicking embed, I stay general. I go to source and I deposit that link. And notice that the dimensions here are entered, and it says constrain proportions, which I want to do because I want to retain the shape or the proportions of the video, but it does mean that if I want to change the size, I can by changing the size in one of the boxes. So if I wanted to make this, instead of 560 pixels wide, I would now say, well, okay, I want to make this, say just an even 1,000. If I do that, and then I click on it, notice that the proportions will be constrained so that it should match. And so one of the other things you can do is if you have a Zoom link of a recorded Zoom meeting that you wanted to include. So let me pull up a Zoom link. I'm trying to get a Zoom recording here. Okay, so if I have recordings, and let's say I had a recording from a previous training. What was a test? Try this one. Okay, and I wanted to share the screen with speaker view. I could pull this link or copy the shareable link, put it in, click on the Insert Edit Media, embed the link, and I could change the proportions to say 1,000 again. It will constrain them. And so you'll see I can press play. This will take a moment. And so you can embed your videos in a way that's easy to share. And for some reason, the Zoom one's not working well, but there is a way of doing that. Now, another thing to note is that a lot of times we like to share links in a page in addition to our text. Links need to be set up. So you need to set up your link. What is it? And then instead of just attaching the link, so say in a government course, one of the ones I like to use is govtrack.us. So in GovTrack, I can work with students and we can track ongoing legislation. And I want to share that link because we'll use it. So if I copy the link, instead of just pasting the link, that actually becomes difficult to use with screen readers. We want to make sure that all links are text that says, this is the link to GovTrack, where you can research legislation and its progress. I highlight the text, I click the link, and I insert. Notice that it's now changed. If I click save, I get the Zoom link or the GovTrack link. Okay, now the other thing to note is that it's important for us to observe some design principles that when it comes to things like color. I know it's very popular to use color and different types of colors in courses. That's great on the one hand. On the other, we have to be careful because our courses need to meet certain contrast standards, need accessibility guidelines, but we also just want to be friendly on people's eyes. So for example, there have been cases where I've seen attempts to say use a background color here, like green, and then to make the text itself red. Why might this be not a recommended approach? Because people who are red-green colorblind are not going to be able to do very well reading this. And it's also not very easy to read for anyone. The contrast really isn't there. That green's kind of bright. The red text doesn't do much. So when we do these kinds of things, or even let's say we wanted to have a different color to the text and then used a color like this. Let's try the accessibility checker. So this little icon, when you're editing, is an accessibility checker, and you should use it. If you click on it, you're going to get issues. And so one is it says text smaller than 18 point or bold, right, should display a minimum contrast ratio for 4.5 to 1. So it is not that, doesn't meet those contrast standards, neither does this line. So if we go through next and then next, we have this listed as an image. We would need alt text. So let's just mark this as decorative for now. But an alt text merely is text that describes an alternate image or an image for a screen reader. So we could say attempted video link. If it's something that you're writing and you're saying get the point and it's a picture of a bullseye and a target, that would be a decorative image. So you would mark decorative. Apply. Okay, so we have to change these colors here. So let's just change this back black. And here, we'll change this back to black. Now we can hit accessibility checker again. No issues are detected. So if we were to do that red and green, once again, we have those. So when we use color, it's important to keep in mind just how we're going to use it and and what we're trying to accomplish, and to keep in mind the ease of accessibility. But pages are pretty helpful. You can guide them through. If the other thing is, now that you've set up a lesson, you've done your instruction, you've had your videos and everything else, you might say, okay, great. Suppose I wanted to include a link in here or connect a file. I can do that too. So let's say I had a picture that I wanted students to follow. I could go to here, embed an image. I can pull it from a URL. I can pull it from my Flickr account, or here I can just pull it from Canvas. Where's files? Now let's say I wanted to use this picture of the Gracie. Wonderful picture here. Notice that it gives me the opportunity to add alt text right here. So I would just write and then update. If I wanted to add an image that wasn't already in, I can use the same approach. I can embed the image. I can go to Canvas, my course files. I'll notice that the file I want isn't there. I can upload a file. And then I can just select a file like it was you know, attaching an email attachment. So let's say I wanted to add this photo. I could add a photo this way, and then it's available for me to add. And update. And there's only one return, okay, and it ain't of the king, it's of the Jedi. I changed my mind. So it has the alt text, it has the image. I can also add a file. Now, a few caveats, things to think about. If I want to add a PowerPoint link or anything like that, I can by simply going to Files, uploading a new file, choosing it just like I would an email attachment. Okay, so let's say it is a PowerPoint. We can find of course, the one day I want to find a PowerPoint, I can't find one. Okay, so let's try Accepted Student Day PowerPoint. There you go. And upload. And you'll see it listed here. One of the things I like to do if we're using a PowerPoint is to highlight that link. I go to this link button here, and you'll see that you have some options. I like to auto open the inline preview for this link and then click update. What does that do? If I click save and look, what you'll see is that that PowerPoint is loading, and it will show up so students don't miss it. Sometimes when you have a series of just links or things like this, you have to set it up and then have it so students can read it in context. Now, that being said, the issue that you run into is they have to be able to download this, and you need to make sure that you've done the accessibility checks in those files to make sure that they can work with screen readers or adaptive technologies for people who may be visually impaired. One final note about pages. So now that you've set all these things up, you've done your lessons, you've done your instruction, you have a couple of things to do. Now say to students, what is next? So now that you have practiced these skills, try them out in the exercises, or in this case, in exercise. And then you can actually link to that exercise by going here to where it says links in Canvas, and say go to assignments, and maybe it's this one. Notice how it's not a URL, it's the actual title of that assignment. So it tells students where to go next. The other thing is that we want students to know to do pages, so we can add them to their to-do list by going down here and checking that box, clicking on the calendar, and assigning the due date. Once we do, you'll see that we have our page, we have our connection to that assignment. And if we were to go to syllabus, where we see that listing of things that are student to-dos, we'll see that the 7.1 introduction is listed under the due date of March or May 15th, 2020. So pages can be really helpful as a way of organizing things. Now, instead of just putting pages and leaving them there, what we want to do is recognize that in modules, each module, we put those pages in this container, and that this container can contain assignments, quizzes, files, pages, discussions, headers, and external links. The problem with just leaving it as a set that links directly to files or headers or URLs and tools is that it doesn't set anything up for students. It doesn't provide that narrative, and that can be problematic, because then it's just a collection of stuff. And what we're trying to do is avoid our online classes from being like Fibber McGee's Closet, where it's a collection of stuff. We want actually to be able to provide a narrative structure behind what goes where. And so by using this feature, we can actually structure how students proceed through content. We can also make prerequisites. So if we were to edit a module here, we can add a requirement. For example, we can say that students have to move through the module in sequential order, and that they have to do this. And by adding these requirements, and I'm just going to add a few of them here, and I update, notice it says complete all items they have to complete. And in order, if I'm a student and I go to the student view, and I go to my modules, I have to go and progress through here in order and I have to view each one in sequence. So at least I have to do that in order to progress through the class. So I can't just skip around and hunt and peck. So that can cause troubles of its own, but it is also sometimes worth setting up that way. So we're just going to leave student view, go back to modules, and get rid of this. Of course, I hit the wrong button. Okay, so we've set up pages, we've used it to instruct, we've now set it up so that we can have our assignments and everything else. Wonderful. So the next part after pages would be your assignments. And so for that, I'll pass that off to Travis, Elaine, and Charlie.
Well, I actually think Gretchen was going to talk about this
section. Oh, I'm sorry, Gretchen. I'm sorry.
Okay, I wasn't sure if there was a change, but I'm happy.
No, sorry.
We're happy to, but.
All right, yeah, I'm ready. Give me just a second to share my window. So I'm going to talk about setting up assignments and the types of assignments you can use. And somebody had said in the chat about adding assignments to the page. You can put it on the page, or you can put it in the module. The way modules are just collecting pieces from around your Canvas course and putting them in order. So you can put it in multiple places. But let me start with the assignments page. And a lot of what basically everything that David just said about how to insert things into pages is exactly what you do in an assignment as well. So in an assignment, you have access to the rich content editor. You can go through and put in video, you can put in files, you can do all of that. Waiting for my Canvas to catch up so I can show you what it looks like. So I'm going to talk more about the types of assignments you might do and the files that you would do. I'm sorry, the submissions you would do. So I'm just going to put in a title here. This is the rich content editor. So this is where you can add links to your pieces of your course, insert other files, put in a video. You can do all kinds of stuff in here to help guide the assignment. But down here is where you're going to put in your information. So points is what is the best score that my student can get is how I phrase that. Because a lot of folks use 100 as their basis, others don't. But basically, what's the best score that I can get? So I'm going to just use 100 as my example. The assignment group, if you have a weighted grade book, or if you have your assignments grouped by case studies and discussions and things like that, you can kind of chunk your assignments together. And display grade as gives you the options of points, percentage, complete, incomplete. Complete, incomplete is one that I use. I often have my students, they have to kind of do an agreement at the start of the semester that they will, do the instructions. They either say yes or no. Complete, incomplete, there's no, it's black and white. There's no gray area. And that's one of the options you can use in here. And then these are your submission types. We're going to talk about online. Text entry gives you a little text box like you might see in a form if you were submitting a form online to some organization. That's great for a short answer, short entry. I agree to the terms of to the norms of the class, to the expectations of the class, something like that. Website URL allows you to have your students submit a link, and it can be to a YouTube video that they have published, or maybe the assignment was to find a YouTube video to contribute to the class content. It could be to a Google Doc. I had someone in the last session ask about using Google Docs instead of file uploads because they like the commenting better. And I have absolutely used this with Google Docs with my students. Make sure that the student has shared the document with you, but they can submit the link and you can do your commenting in Google Docs if that's more comfortable for you. I've used this for blog posts. I've used this for article submissions, things like that. Media recordings is audio or video. This was used extensively by our foreign language classes in the last few weeks of the semester. Our sign language courses use media recordings in their quizzes as well as just in their assignments, that here's a list of what, I want you to sign this back to me, and the students would do media recordings, allow access to their camera, and sign their answers back to the instructor. So even a sign language course was able to be successfully completed online. And file uploads is the one that most people use. So file uploads is the written paper. I want you to fill out this document and return it to me. You should never, and I still see it sometimes, fill out this document and email it to me. Don't have your students email you. It's making your life so much harder than it needs to be. And we don't want you to have a harder life than you need to have. So file uploads means that the students will submit the file. Restrict upload file types can be really handy. I always restrict them if it's a written work to a docx PDF. If you are dealing with spreadsheets and you don't want to deal with a numbers file from a Mac, make it an XLS, XLSX type of file. If you're dealing with some specialized software and you want to make sure that they're submitting it in the specialized file format you want, you can restrict that file format. And basically what will happen is that when students try to submit it, Canvas will say, no, it's not it. You got to go back, and it will force students to export it into the file or save it in the file format that you want. And last is VeriCite submissions. And VeriCite is our Originality Checker. It's been Turnitin in the past, and then it was VeriCite, and now Turnitin has actually bought VeriCite. long and storied history of those two, but basically this is checking originality. And when you select this, any submission will be compared against online resources, journal articles, things like that, as well as papers submitted to Husson that also used VeriCite in the past. This is for the type of writing that is going to be original writing. This is not for define these 10 key terms from the textbook, because if a student is defining the 10 key terms correctly, then you're going to have a real high match among all students. It's going to like everyone cheated, but that's a very black and white assignment. It should all look the same. This is for the original pieces. We use this a lot in the EH 123, 124, 200 courses, where you're looking for original work, a research paper. You might want to turn on VeriCite submissions. It's also important to note that you can't turn it on after you've collected the work from students, because when this is turned on, students go to submit their file, they have the right file type, it will pop up and say, you know, you must certify that this is your original work. Are you sure you did all this work yourself? And they have to click yes, and they have to consent to that. We cannot run papers through VeriCite without a student's consent, and this is where they consent to it. And if you turn it on after the submissions, it's not going to scan them. So if you think you need to use VeriCite, turn it on before you do the assignments. If you are not sure if you should or not, please feel free to ask us, because we'll tell you if your assignment is the use case for VeriCite and let you know if it's not and let you know if it is and help you get it set up. Group assignments allow you to assign a project to a group. We don't have students in this demo class, so I can't really show you that, but you can also set it up when you do that if you want to have students working together on a collaborative project. One of the options with a group assignment is that you assign it to the groups, and then you say, okay, now I want to give each individual their own grade, because I assigned it to, and I'm just looking at the list of people that I see on my screen. I assigned it to Gretchen, Deb, Travis, and David, but I can tell by looking at this, and I know that David never showed up because Gretchen complained about it all the time. And so I'm not going to give him an A for the work that Gretchen, Deborah, and Travis did. So I'm going to give him a different grade. It allows you to be a little bit more picky on the grades when you assign a different grade.
Oh, but I'm an A student.
Well, you should have contributed. I can see when you edited the document. And then peer reviews allow students to review other work in the class. Peer reviews you can assign. When you assign them, you can do it manually. So if you say, hey, it's Gretchen, Deb, Travis, and David all work together, I want them to review each other's work because they're working as this group, I can set up the groups to be that we're all going to review each other's work. Automatically is random. So I can say I'm going to automatically do it, and I want every student to have to review 2 other students or 3 other students or however many you want. What happens with peer reviews is that it will send out the reviews to the reviewers after the due date passes, unless you change it. When you change the date, you can kind of give it a day's window, because if a student doesn't submit a paper, they are not going to be assigned anyone to review, and no one will be reviewing them because they haven't submitted it. So I often will set the due date, say for Monday, and set peer reviews for Tuesday, so that I can go in on Monday and say, hey, Deb, Travis, and David, you haven't submitted your paper yet. I need you to submit your paper so that when the peer reviews are assigned, there's something to attach to you. And peer reviews are really helpful, especially if you're using rubrics or if you're using those really measurable objectives. Sometimes it hurts less coming from your classmate than your instructor. And so I often use it in a draft process. So review this, and then the students can be like, hey, you didn't meet this objective at this point, and then the student can edit their draft, and when they finally do submit it, then they can feel confident that they're getting the information to me that they need to give to me. And then assignment due dates. Assigned to everyone. It can, let's say it's due on the 21st, available from and until, these are lock dates. So I can say it's due on the 21st, but I don't want you to see it till the 17th. And you absolutely can't submit after the 22nd. I can put those specific dates in. And add here is to add due dates. So where this comes in really handy are when you have an ongoing assignment through a semester. For example, say you have 12 students in the class, and each week a different student has to present an article on a current event. And you've already mapped it out, and you know that Deb's going to present in week 1 and Travis is going to be presenting in week 12. You can give Travis a due date for week 12 and Deb a due date for week 1, so that it doesn't look like Travis is late because if the due date is too early, and it helps keep students on track as well. You can also use if you have an athlete who's going to be at a game and you want to give them the quiz on the day before or something like that. It allows you to customize your due dates to the student or to groups. So I'm going to just check the chat for questions. Let's see, file size limits. There's a pretty big ability for files where we sometimes run into issues is video. And with the video, if it's a really large video, I tell students to put it in Google Drive and have website URL as an option for video submission instead of just a file upload, because we can put pretty much anything in Google Drive and provide a link. There is no way to run assignments through VeriSite outside of Canvas. And it depends on the, I don't know what type of files you're working with, Deb, to have them say it's not uploading, but it is a 500 meg thing. And let me see. I can help with groups.
Were you talking to me, Gretchen? Deb,
yeah, I'm just reading down through the chats to make sure I'm answering any questions that are up here.
Yep, Deb Banyan or me. You're referring to the question I asked you in the last session about Google Drive?
The Google, yeah, well, I did mention that with Google Drive, you can have them submitted as a link, and then you can do your comments in Google Drive if you want. That's fine. You can also do submission comments, but put the grade in on SpeedGrader and Canvas.
Okay. You just helped me figure out how we can link our videos that we do for Practicum too. So thank you.
Good. All right, good. So I'm going to talk about one other assignment type, which is discussion. So I'm going to toggle over here, and you're going to be real surprised when you see that even in discussions, you're going to see the same layout. So you have the rich content editor, you can embed video, you can embed images, you can link to other places in your course, you can do all that. Discussions here, the options that you have here are allow threaded replies, which I like to use because it makes it clear who a student is responding to. Users must post before seeing replies can be really helpful to students to feel like they're not just echoing what someone else said. If they know they're looking at a blank canvas, they can be more, feel more original in their statement. Don't worry about podcast feed because that's for audio comments, and I don't know anyone that uses that. Graded. I do find that our students are pretty grade motivated. So if you can make it a graded assignment and give it even 5 points, I find that you get better participation. And then allow liking is whatever you'd like to do here. But one of the things with discussions is people can get overwhelmed by them. So I recommend that you would do small group discussion. So this is a group discussion. I've had people say, well, isn't every discussion a group discussion? What this will do is allow you to break your students into small discussion groups. So imagine if you were in the classroom and you had them all sitting in pods around the classroom, you might go from pod to ask students to chime in on what they're coming up with, what resources they're finding, or whatever it is the topic is. You can do the same thing online. So I usually have a class size around maybe 24 students, and I will break them into either 4 or 6, into groups of 6 or 8 in my discussion groups, because the smaller discussion group is, the more authentic it feels. It feels better for the student who, if you leave it at 24, somebody's going to be the 24th student to chime in, and they might feel like every good answer has been used, every good resource has been shared. They might feel like they're coming in with, scraping the bottom of the barrel for content. When you break it into the smaller groups, the instructor gets access to every one of those groups, but each group does not get access to each other group. So as the instructor, if I say find a current event about ethics in teaching, I might see the same article across all 4 of those groups, but each student has to provide an original one. And so it feels more natural for the group, for the students to have that small discussion. It also makes it more manageable for the students. It makes it more manageable for you. You can always look on SpeedGrader and see every student in a list, and you can see quickly who has chimed in and who hasn't. It's very easy in a group of 24 to think that maybe the instructor won't notice if I don't post in the discussion thread. Whereas with SpeedGrader, I can get a really quick census of who is posting and who is not. And that can be really helpful as well. But when it comes to discussion questions themselves, you really want to think about what you're asking your students to do. If you're asking, to write a history of ethics and teaching and provide 5 APA reference sources, that's not necessarily a discussion question. That's a written paper, and that's probably better served as an assignment that a student would upload, maybe use peer reviewed to let other students see the other content. But a discussion should foster conversation. It should think about, maybe you want to think about an example of a teacher being fired for their ethical behavior. Or maybe is there an example that you have from your own life where you were questioning the ethics of somebody that you worked with? Or, going into tying it to real life, tying it to the student's life, tying it to current events, something like that, that can give students the opportunity to bring material to the table. It should not just be regurgitating vocabulary words or a timeline or dates and times and things like that, but think about the things that you might ask in a classroom, and then how can we turn that into an online discussion? And you don't need to respond to every student in your class, which is another misconception. You should definitely be in there mingling. Again, think of the classroom. I'll walk around, check in. Hey, what are you guys finding? Oh, that's a great resource. That's a good thought, Travis. I like that. And move on to the next group. But I'm not necessarily going to go through every 24 students and have a specific response to each of them. But I'm engaging in their group discussion as a member of that. Any questions? I know I talk fast, so I always say that.
How do you comment in the discussion?
How do you comment in that? You can reply to the discussion just like a member of the discussion board, and that goes to everybody in the group that you're conversing with. You can also do a submission comment in SpeedGrader, and that goes by student. So a submission comment in SpeedGrader would be private just to the student, whereas the discussion board is going to be public to that group discussion.
Thanks. Gretchen, you said that we could track who was participating in a discussion using the SpeedGrader.
Yep.
And can you show us how to do that?
Yep. When you make it graded, I think I have an example of one here already. Let me look. It's let me open up the thing. This doesn't have any students in it, but this is a graded one. If I go to SpeedGrader, what will happen is that, I don't have students, so it's kind of hard to show here, but what will happen is that you'll see each student's replies out of context. So you'll say, oh, Gretchen posted on May 10th, and she posted twice on May 13th, and it was a reply to these people. You can always click on it to see how it was in context, but I will see that. And just like when you look at the list of students in an assignment, and you can see when someone hasn't submitted the assignment, you'll see when someone hasn't participated in the discussion. And so you might go through and say, oh, I see Gretchen submitted, but also she only posted once and she never showed back up to respond. And it kind of just makes it, in the old days, you might sit there with a pen and paper and your roster and be like, okay, Christine posted and she has her 2 here. Okay, good. And Travis posted once, or Control F trying to find names, things like that. It can be, that can be tricky. So in SpeedGrader, it does all that for you. It just says, here's when they did it, here's what they said, go to the discussion to see who they were saying it to.
Thank you.
Yeah. You can also attach rubrics to your discussions and your assignments, and we can help you if you have worked with assessment on writing a rubric. I can help you get that rubric into Canvas, and that can be really easy. This is not a rubric for a discussion, this is just a sample rubric, but that can be really nice for just doing a grade really quickly and providing a grade if you have some real measurable objectives to your discussion rubric. Right, let me check the chat for questions here. Let's see. So yeah, there's no way to separate the due dates for post your replies by then. You can do it manually by just bumping the due date up. You can also do that on calendar. If you go into your Canvas calendar, you can actually drag an assignment date. So if say Wednesdays when you expect your first post and Sundays you expect your replies, you could go in on Thursday and just drag that due date over to Sunday each week. And it is a manual process, but that's the easiest way to do it at this point. And let's see. All right. Any other questions? Is that it? Am I tossing it back to Dave or Travis or anyone? I'll stop sharing. And anything I've shown you, of course, I'm always happy to help you get it set up in your own class.
Very good. Well, we want to thank you for your time. If there's no more questions, we would like to remind you that the third session will be at 2 o'clock today. So if you missed that third session, you have another opportunity. We'll be sending out a link to all the recordings shortly. They're all on the YouTube channel with the Office of Distance and Online Education or Extended Education. And thank you all for being here.
Where do you find that?
The link for the YouTube channel?
Yeah.
Okay. Let me post it right now in the in the chat. Hello. Welcome to the Division of Online and Extended Learning and our YouTube.
And then David, you made a reference to July 6th. I wasn't sure what that was in reference to.
That's the how to develop or design your online course that
Oh,
Jeff asked
perfect.
about earlier.
Oh, you just took away the chat too soon unless it's gonna
Yep.
be there.
So that's the how to design your online course.
I thought it was the link to the YouTube.
Yep,
Okay.
that's here too.
All right. So I guess I'm still confused too, because I don't know how to get to the YouTube or how we find out how to sign up for these classes.
Well, we don't have a sign up for the classes yet, so that'll be
Okay.
a separate message that comes out.
All right. Are they going to be on Canvas, I hope?
Yeah, they'll be
Oh,
run
thank
through
you.
Canvas. Yeah.
Okay. That's great.
Yep.
Very good.
Okay.
Thank you, everybody. For
Thanks,
those
everyone.
who are coming for the third session, we will see you at 2 o'clock. And for everyone else, thank you for your time.
Okay. Thank you.
Still don't have the link.
It's in the chat.
It's in the chat, Brill?
It disappeared from the chat that was visible to anybody.
Oh, found it.
You got it?
Yeah.
Very good. Thank you.
I didn't see it.
Okay. Thanks.
It's still in the chat. Maria, if you go into the chat and scroll all the way to the bottom,
Got it.
and if you click that, it will open right to David's YouTube page, and then you can bookmark that.
Thank you.
All set?
Yep. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks.
See ya.
Bye.
Brill, are you all set? Did you find it?
I did find it, but during the break, I tried to go start my new course
Mm-hmm.
and can't even figure out how to get from the Commons and pull in something into my file. So,
Okay.
and that goes back to the very beginning of the very basics of setting up the course. So I don't know if I mean, that'll probably be covered in the July 6th something or other.
That would definitely be part of the larger class that we'd be doing. But just how far did you get? When you clicked on Commons, did you get a screen that had a bunch of templates on it?
Yes.
Great.
And I found the Husson ones.
Okay.
Great.
Okay, but the nursing one is not set up the same way with the little boxes across the,
No.
you know, the little nice boxes across the top that have course content and so on.
Mhm.
Well,
Nursing's is set up a little differently. I don't know. I kind of like the things across the top, but whatever. But when I click on it, I don't know how to get it from those templates into my course on Canvas.
okay. So,
Do I copy paste? Do
Nope.
I?
nope. So I go to the nursing one, and let me walk you through it. Okay, can you see my screen?
Yep.
Okay. So I go to nursing. The one with the boxes is actually not an approved design. So
Oh, okay.
No. I click on that.
Yep.
See where it says import download?
No. Oh, yes. Okay.
If I click on that, a list of your courses should come up.
Okay. So that was the piece that was missing for me because it went very quickly and I totally missed that. So,
Okay.
Not a problem. The easy thing to miss.
well, I was
Yeah.
just trying to apply the information immediately before I forgot it to start my course. All right.
Okay. You're all set.
I still don't know. Well, let me play with it a little bit. I'm still not sure about setting up pages within modules or whatever. I don't know. So, but I'll play around with it a little bit
Okay.
And if you get stuck, reach out. We're happy to help.
Yep.
Okay, thanks.
Larry, can I help you? No. Maria? You're on mute, Maria.
How you divide the groups?
So it's hard to do without any students being in your class. But when you have students in your class and you click on that feature for groups, you'll have all your students and you can actually arrange them into the different groups. I think there might also be a way to set them in your people section, but you could follow up with Gretchen and get more detail on that.
Thank you.
It's something you can't really do until you have people in your class.
It's a way that we can help the students to how to look for a partner in case they have to work together.